Sorry to see some folks leaving. I am going to raffle off a copy of my book, Slicing Pie, to someone in this audience. If you want a copy and you got a business card, somehow get it to the front of the room. All of my classes, I teach entrepreneurship at Northwestern University, and I teach it at University of Chicago. First entrant for the raffle. And they always look at pictures of cute animals first, because the picture of a cute animal helps you learn better and remember things better over the long term. And I have some research on that. If you'd like to see it, I'd be happy to share it with you. I regret saying this. Yeah. Towards the end. Yeah. Now you have to wait. How many people are in a startup with a partner right now? How many people have been in a startup with a partner and failed because the partnership went bad? I'm going to teach you today how to make sure that doesn't happen again, ever. And the first question I have for you is, why do you start a company in the first place? Why do you do this? Anyone? Why do you start companies? What's the point? To solve a problem, to make money, what else? Freedom. What kind of freedom? Freedom to work too much. I'm conflicted about teaching this topic because it's so hard, right? Being an entrepreneur is extremely hard. But so why do? You're making money, you got freedom, you're changing the world. I think it's got something to do with this. I think you have hard work and you have fun along the way and you get a big payout later. This is fun, right? Parties like this, it's supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, what's the point of doing it? Has anybody ever had a real job? What's more fun, the real job or the startup? Who says real job? Who says startup? But you're going to get a big payout. Who's going to get a big payout? What's it going to be? Satisfaction on achieving the goal. So there's an emotional payout. Who's getting a financial payout? How much is yours going to be? Millions. How much is it going to be? Who knows what they're going to get? Has anybody tried to figure this out yet? Do a financial model maybe, or a spreadsheet? Anybody done this yet? See, the problem is we don't know what it's going to be. We have no idea what our payout's going to be. So I think success looks like something like this. Besides achieving your goals, your emotional, I did it, I changed the world in a positive way. We want to make lots of money and you want to get your fair share. That sound all right? Lots of money, get your fair share. If it's fair, it'll be fun. When you worked your real job, why wasn't it fun? It wasn't fair. Why wasn't it fair? Who got paid enough in their real job? Whose ideas were valued as they should have been in a real job? Who felt like they mattered in a real job? It's not fair. You're working your butt off. You're not getting paid enough. You're getting sold short. If it's not fair, it will be fun. And as long as your startup starts and stays fair, it'll be fun. And those of you who had failures because of your startup, it probably started going south when you realized it wasn't fair. Does that make sense? So this brings it to my perfectly fair equity split. The perfectly fair equity split is your share, what you should own in your company, should be equal to the value of your contribution divided by the total value of the firm. So what you contributed divided by what it's worth should be your share. Does that make sense? Anybody have an argument with this? Anybody disagree with this basic premise? Anybody see a problem with this? It's what? Which part? All of it, right? On the off chance you could possibly figure out what your contribution is worth, how much is your company worth? How much is it worth? Probably zero. And you can't divide by zero very well. So this is a fundamentally flawed calculation. So what most people do, with the inability to solve that equation, they do what's called a fixed equity split. And 67% of companies do this at the outset of the venture. The first deal they do is they sit down with their partners and they say, let's figure out what we're going to get. Does this sound familiar? Doing this, by the way, is the same thing as saying, I'm going to hire you for $100,000 a year, and you're going to work for me for 4.5 years, so I'm going to give you $450,000 on day one. That sound all right? You want that job? Sounds stupid, doesn't it? It sounds dumb that I would give you your salary on day one. But when I give you your equity share on day one, it's the same thing. When I give you your equity on day one, it's the same thing as giving you your entire compensation package on day one. Because usually, if you're not getting paid, that's your compensation. So, 90% of startups do an equal split. Who's done an equal split before? 50-50. 90% chance you're going to do this. Maybe there's 3 of you guys, a third, quarter. Because there's no way to figure it out. So you know what, it's just easier. And a lot of people, well-meaning experts, recommend this. Do it 50, keep it easy, right? Is it easy to do this? Super easy, right? No hard feelings, right? What's really hard is unwinding the mess you cause by doing this when it goes south. So sometimes people go, oh, I got to maintain control of my company, so I'm going to keep 51%. If your decisions are so unpopular that you have to exercise your 51% voting right to get them passed, you're not a very stable company in the first place. Or maybe it's your idea, so you figure you got to have more. These are all fixed equity splits. But what if something changes? We just saw a thing about testing, right? Testing, things change and change and change and change and change and change and change. The only thing that will never change is the fact that your startup company will always change. So let's say you're a marketing person and I'm a tech person. We've got to hire a tech person. Does the equity come out of your share because you're a marketing guy, or is it my share because I'm getting help but you're not, right? So how do we figure that one out? Or what if you want to quit our company and you own half the company? Or if I want to quit? I met a guy once, his CTO got hit by a bus and died. He died. It was tragic. Sounds funny now, I get it, but. You're the CTO? You better watch your step out there. Never ride a bus. He said his wife inherited half the company. We were a 50-50 split. And it felt like the right thing to do. But what feels weird is that for every moment from the rest of my tenure with this company, I got to give her half our earnings. And she doesn't want to give back, and she has no skills whatsoever. So this guy, because of this deal, gave half his money to this guy's wife and had no recourse. Company, I actually don't know what happened to that company, but things happen all the time. So when things change in your company, this is going to happen. The first one is the little greater than. This means you have more than your fair share. Who's okay having more than their fair share? Raise your hand if it's okay with you to have more than your fair share. Keep them up. Now, who wants to work with those guys? But I get it, right? It's going to go south. It's going to change. I might as well at least get what I deserve, maybe just a little bit more. Totally understandable, right? So the second thing that could happen is you could have less than your fair share. Who's cool with that? Once in a while, I got a guy someone go, just as long as the business, just as long as it happens. I just want to see this baby live. But when it actually happens, they get pissed off. And most of the time, when you see a founder dispute, it's this dude on the bottom that's pissed off at the dude at the top. The guy who has more than their fair share is rarely upset about it. The guy who realizes they're working and working and working and working and lining somebody else's pocket gets pissed off. I call these alligator pit negotiations. We have the less than gators and the greater than gators. Who's been in an alligator pit? You been inside one? What's it like? Hard to negotiate. What's your instinct?
I'm not sure.
Don't know what to think, right? Self-preservation?
Depending on the days, I guess.
Fear? Do you want to spend a lot of time in the alligator pit?
As little as possible.
Little as possible. These are the emotions you bring to the negotiating table when you negotiate your equity split, because you know that you're going to walk away with less than you deserve or more than you deserve. You know it's going to be wrong. That's the problem I'm trying to solve today. So what we need here, and if it's not fair, it won't be fun. So what we need to solve this problem is this. We need a system that is perfectly fair, not kind of fair, sort of fair, only fair on Tuesdays. Absolutely perfectly fair. We need to reward actual contributions of work provided, not promises of work, but actual contributions. We want to provide ongoing motivation to continue contributing. We want to be able to add and subtract people to the team. We want to be flexible in the case of rapid change, because things have changed pretty quickly, right? And by the way, when things change in a traditional fixed split, who gets the first phone call? Lawyer? Got a new guy on board. Let's get a new operating agreement, a new shareholders agreement, an amendment to our third thing, and blah, 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 blah. I love lawyers. Any lawyers in the house? I'm looking for lawyers in Canada. We'll talk. I'll send you some business. I love lawyers, but you shouldn't be spending your money on the lawyers at this point. You should be spending the money on marketing and product development and testing and all that kind of stuff. And we want to get rid of the gators. You want to get rid of the situation where you know you're going to get taken advantage of, or you're going to take advantage of somebody else. That's the goal here. So what I'm going to show you today is a model to do that. It's called a dynamic equity split. A dynamic equity split is one that changes over time. And research has shown that a model that adjusts over time is better than a fixed split. The problem with dynamic equity splits is they're very difficult to implement in real life. I'm going to show you how to implement a model that's very simple. That'll be perfect. So if you contributed 23.2% of what it took to get to the place you're going, you should get 23.2% of what the company produces. If you contributed 50% of what it took to get there, you should get 50%. You should get your fair share, no more and no less, because it'll be fair and it'll be fun. The model is called a grunt fund. Is anybody familiar with this book, by the way? A couple people read it. Thank you. Always nice to see some people that know that. There's two pieces to the grunt fund. There's an allocation framework. The allocation framework determines how you allocate percentages of your company to individuals within the firm. And the recovery framework is getting it back when the person leaves. If you don't get it back, you have an absentee owner. And an absentee owner, in most cases, doesn't like you that much and can cause a lot of problems. Because they got to sign off on everything, they can request documents, they can do all kinds of things that are kind of annoying. If possible, you should avoid this. So you need a mechanism for getting it back. There's a great movie called Startup.com. Has anyone seen Startup.com? It was made by a company that started in the 90s. And they went through millions of dollars, like 60 or 70 million dollars of the startup fund. The only person that made any money whatsoever was the guy who bailed out and flaked out in the beginning and had a high buyout price, made $1 million. So you got to have a recovery framework. So here's how it works. There are 3 steps to making this work. The first one is you convert all contributions to slices. A slice is a fictional measure of relative risk. And I'll talk about what that means in a minute. So you convert to slices. Then you apply this formula. Your share equals the slices that you contributed divided by all the slices in the pie. Your risk divided by all the risk. Simple as that. And it changes over time. It's dynamic. It self-adjusts based on what you contribute to keep it fair. That's why it's called dynamic. Slicing equity in a startup company is about risk. When you contribute something to a startup company, you're taking a risk. What's the likelihood you're going to be paid back? Is it a big likelihood? Is it a pretty safe bet? Or are you virtually guaranteed to lose all your money? It's an extremely high level of risk. So when you contribute something to a startup company, you're making a bet on the future. You're betting that thing on the future. Just like if you and I went to Las Vegas, and we each went to blackjack, and we each put down $1, and we win. How much do you get? Half. Why? We put the same amount. We risked the exact same amount. Now, what if you put $10 in, and I put $5 in? What do you get? 2/3. Not too hard to figure out, right? We're betting on the future. Now, what if you're a millionaire, and I'm a homeless guy, and all I got's $5? So you put your 10 bucks in, no problem. I put my 5 bucks in, huge problem. What do you get if we win? 2/3. You with me still? The tolerance for risk is meaningless. The actual risk is meaningful. The amount of that risk that you're taking, that you're betting on the future of that company, is very, very specific. Today, we base equity splits on the future value, the projection, what we think is going to happen, what we hope is going to happen, on prayers. We base it on unknowable things. But the amount of risk we take is very, very knowable. It's equal to what you would have otherwise been paid for that same input by someone who could afford to pay. Make sense? So, if you're worth $100,000 a year as a marketing guy, doing marketing stuff, and there's lots of people who pay you $100,000 a year, and you come to work for me doing marketing stuff, how much are you risking? $100,000 a year. That is an unambiguous number. Now, you got to negotiate your salary for sure, but other than that, it's an unambiguous number. Everything has a fair market value. So to convert to slices, there's ideas, inventions, there's relationships, there are facilities, there's equipment, there's supplies, there's money. What's a dollar worth? A dollar. What's your dollar worth? And your dollar? And your dollar? And your dollar? It's worth $1, right? My dollar is worth like $1.29. But it's still worth $1. There's still a risk there, right? So all you do is convert to slices. You take the fair market value, and I'm going to take you through what the fair market value is and all these things in a second, and you apply a risk multiplier. A risk multiplier says to the world and says to you, you are taking an extreme amount of risk, a huge amount of risk. The chance of you getting paid is virtually non-existent. We've got a 90% failure rate. You're going to fail, but we're going to bet anyway because it's a fun game to play. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to keep trying. So if it's a non-cash contribution, like time, ideas, relationships, old equipment you already had, you multiply it by 2. If it's a cash contribution, which is cash spent on the company, or unreimbursed expenses, or stuff you buy for the company, that's treated as cash, you multiply it by 4. This recognizes the fact that cash is harder to come by than time. Who's got more money than they have time? Raise your hand. Maybe Bill Gates. Is Bill Gates here? Bill? I heard somewhere that if Bill Gates saw $100 on the ground, it wouldn't be worth his time to pick it up. It's got to be like, $100. And just walk by, right? But most of us have more time than we have money. If we had plenty of money, what could we do for our startup? What? Not waste time picking that up, or just pay for everything, right? If I hired you and I paid you $100,000, you're not taking any risk. I'm taking it, right? Hire you, I can do all that. In fact, I do that. I got a team of guys. They know what I do. I just pay them their full market salary, and they don't get any shares in my companies because they're not taking any risk. Now, I got other deals where people are taking risk, and they do get shares. But my own team, I pay them. So the risk multipliers recognize that risk. Whoops. So here's an example. Time. You take your fair market salary, what you can earn on the open market doing the same kind of stuff you're doing anyway. You subtract your cash compensation. If I pay you, you're not taking risk. Remember, startup equity is risk. Equity in established companies, your stock option package or whatever you got, that's not risk. You're not taking personal risk. You're getting a bonus. You're getting golden handcuffs. You're getting an incentive program. That's not risk. Startup risk is risk. It's personal risk. I multiply it by 2 for my risk multiplier. I divide by 2,000, which is roughly the number of hours in a year. Canada is 40 hours a week, right? That's like the legal working thing. In Japan, it's like 180 hours a week. Oh, you got to work like nonstop in Japan, you know. In like New Zealand, it's like 36 hours. And you divide by 2,000, get your grunt hourly resource rate, or grrr, which is the sound you make when you're at work coding or marketing stuff. So here's an example. Someone could make $100,000 We're going to pay them $25,000. That's all we can afford to pay, 25 grand. That means they're putting $75,000 at risk. We multiply by 2, divide by 2,000, and we get 75 slices per hour. That means every hour this person is working on the job at our startup company, he's contributing 75 slices to our pie. Every moment that goes by, 75 more slices. Make sense? Cash. Take the amount of cash spent and times it by 4. If I invested $1 million in your company and you put it in this company savings account, is it at risk? Why not? You can return it, right? Just give it back to me. It's not really at risk. If you take the money out of the savings account and spend it on something, then it's at risk, right? When the money is spent, it turns into slices. So you put $1 in, you get 4 slices. Equipment. If you buy it for the company, that's an unreimbursed expense, same thing as cash, multiply by 4. If it's an old truck or something you already had, it's non-cash, multiply by 2. And if it's older than a year, look at the book value on eBay or Blue Book value or whatever you have. If it's a relationship, the fair market value of a relationship is a very specific thing. What's your relationship worth? It's worth something if you can convert it to cash, either by selling something to that person or perhaps generating in revenue or investment or maybe referral or something. So the unpaid commission is at risk. The ideas and inventions have a concrete fair market value. We think ideas are everything, right? Ideas like, oh, I had the idea. The idea is so important. I work with a lot of universities, and the people who develop the ideas routinely think they should keep 90% just for coming up with the idea. I mean, it's absolutely the fair, 90%. I've had people say, I'm going to continue my research. You have this idea, you commercialize it, I'll give you 5%. Do you think that sounds fair? If I have an idea, like I write a book, or I write an awesome rock song, or I invent something that goes into a car and saves gas, the manufacturer of that car usually pays me a royalty. Now, this is especially important in the startup world because we pivot away from our ideas. So you have an idea that's awesome, right? We think it's awesome, so we put it in place, and then we pivot away, so we're no longer running a business on your idea. I'm glad we didn't pay you for it, but thanks for showing up. Now, you still spend time, but ideas come and go in startups, so ideas are worth royalties, unpaid royalties. So when the revenue comes in as a result of that idea, a percentage is paid to the developer of that idea in form of an unpaid royalty or slices. If you spend money on unreimbursed expenses, tickets to Startupfest, to research your idea, times 4. So I'll show you how this works. Here's our herd of grunts, all milling around, trying to get hired. We hired 3 of them. We got the junior developer, do some WordPress testing type things. We got our founder who had the idea, some equipment, put some time in. We had our rich uncle, bankrolled this puppy, introduced some important people, made some important connections. All we do is convert their stuff to slices, whatever it was. We add it all up, and we divide each person's share by the total slices. Their risk divided by everybody's risk. 1, 2, 3. There's our pie. It's logical that the junior developer only has a little slice, where the rich uncle has a lot. It's logical that the guy who bankrolled this thing has more than the founder. The founder might have liked to have had it, but he didn't put any money in it. The rich uncle put it all up. So by taking relative risk, we have properly allocated the pie in the way it should be allocated. Now, this is a sales guy. We're going to hire him. His name is Bob. He's coming on board. He's put some time in. He's got a Rolodex. Who wants people with Rolodexes? Got to make some rain, right? I hired a guy once, paid him $200,000 a year, gave him a chunk of, more than I was getting myself. Gave him a chunk of equity. He produced no sales. If his Rolodex is valuable, it'll turn into sales. If his Rolodex is not valuable, it will not turn into sales. That's how you tell if it's valuable, right? So this guy has a good Rolodex. Just convert his stuff to slices. add it to the base, and you recalculate everyone's shares as 1, 2, 3, and number 4. So now our pie looks like this. The rich uncle has a slightly smaller percentage, but is he still happy? Of course he's happy. It's a bigger pie. Company's moving forward. Things are happening. Revenue's being generated. Things are awesome. Now, you got to pretend for a moment that none of the other dudes did any more work this quarter or this period. But theoretically, they're also working. They're adding more slices too. That's how you allocate shares. Now, to recover shares, you have to take into account the nature of the separation. There are 4 reasons why someone can be fired from a company. I once worked for a company. I was a founder, a co-founder, and I left the company. And a few weeks later, my partner said, "Oh, by the way, according to our agreement, I get to buy back your shares at fair market value, which is 0." He had changed my job in a way that allowed me to leave. And so he got to keep my shares, most of my shares. Does that sound fair? Now, it was legal, and I'd actually agreed to it, but just because that happens doesn't make it right. Just because you can bully someone into a bad agreement doesn't make it right. So you have to determine what is right. You can be fired for good reason. What's being fired for good reason? Bringing a gun to work, sexual harassment, not doing your job, right? Not doing your job is warning, warning, fired. Got to give them a warning. Why do you got to give them a warning? Is it the law here? In the United States, it's called at-will employment. You can fire for someone for whatever you want. But in Canada, gets it because it's not fair not to. You got to give someone the chance to correct their behavior. They may not know they're not performing. They may not know how to perform. You can fire someone for no good reason. Just fire them, lay off. Or I didn't give you a warning, so without a warning, it's no good reason. You can resign for good reason. Resign for good reason is something like, oh, you are our chief marketing officer, now you're going to flip burgers for us. Not what you signed up for, is it? Or, hey, it's cool that you guys live in Montreal, moving the company to Seattle, pack your bags, pack your family up. Or you are getting a base of 100,000, we're going to give you 28,000 now. That cool? Not what you signed up for, right? So you can resign for good reason. You can also resign for no good reason. I quit. I don't believe in the company anymore. I can't afford to work for free anymore. Just quitting. If you resign for good reason, or you get fired for no good reason, the company has made decisions that negatively impact your future. See that? You deserve protection. On the flip side of the coin, if you get fired for good reason, or you quit for no good reason, you have made decisions that negatively impact the future of the company. You've left them in the lurch. You haven't done your job. You're leaving them without help. They deserve protection from you. So, if you're fired for good reason, or you're terminated for good, or you quit for no good reason, if you make a decision that negatively impacts the future of the company, you lose your slices. They vanish for non-cash contributions. Bye-bye, thanks for playing. We got to move on without you. Your cash contributions go down to 1. So the multipliers create consequences for the person departing. You put $1,000 in, I give you $1,000 back, we're done. I buy you out for that price. It's painful to leave a company under these circumstances, as it should be. We want you to think twice before you leave us in the lurch. On the flip side of the coin, if the company pushes you out or fires you for no reason, you get to keep your slices at the full number of slices. It's $1 per slice now. You put $1,000 in, I got to give you $4,000 to get you back out. You risked a $100,000 salary, I got to pay you a $200,000 salary to get you out. That's a great return on anybody's investment. It's painful for a company to let someone go under these circumstances, as it should be. The employee deserves protection. So here's how it works. Here's our team. The junior developer is not doing his job. do your job. Warning number 1. Next week, still not doing this job. Do your job. Next week, you're fired. 2 warnings, fired. All you do is take this guy's stuff out of the pie. They vanish. And you recalculate every share. This is done automatically. It's a dynamic program. So now the pie looks like this. Now the uncle has a little bit more, but the future is uncertain. You've got to hire a new developer, find a new web guy, you got to outsource that. May or may not work. I heard a story from Canada this week. 2 founders, a non-technical founder and a technical co-founder. Technical co-founder built the software, and then he quit. And he said to the technical co-founder, or the non-technical co-founder, if you want this software, you got to pay me $100,000. So he's effectively held it hostage. Under this model, great, quit if you want, but know the circumstances under which you quit. He was holding it hostage. So eventually you want to freeze the pie. Eventually you want to stop allocating slices. When you can just pay people for your stuff, you don't need to allocate slices anymore. And there's 2 situations under which that happens. The first one is you generate revenues. When the money comes in, you can use it to pay people who are working for you. Or you raise Series A investment. In my book, Series A investment means I raise enough money to meet my financial needs in the foreseeable future. Anything less than that's an angel investment. So here's how it works with the revenue. So let's say you got a fair market salary of $100,000 a year. I pay you nothing because I got no money. That means every hour you're earning 100 slices per hour. So every hour it goes by, 100 slices, 100 slices, 100 slices. Now we get revenues in the door. Now I can afford to pay you. I pay you $25,000 a year. Now every hour you work is worth 75 slices an hour. You keep your old slices, they're still in the pie, but now the number of slices you earn per hour go down. Now I can pay you $50,000 a year. Again, it goes down. Now I'm paying you $50,000 a year minus slices, and so on, until I can pay your entire market salary. I'm now paying you, and you get no slices. You keep your old slices, but you're getting no new slices. So now the pie is frozen. Now what happens when your revenues exceed your expenses? What's it called? Profits. Now you got to figure out how to distribute those profits. When the profits come in, and I hope they will, you just distribute the profits or the proceeds of a sale based on your pie. This means that the risk I took is now being finally rewarded properly. I'm getting my salary. I'm being paid going forward, but the risk I took is now being rewarded from the payoff of the bet. Roulette has paid off. This is how much I get. Takes your bet into account and gives you exactly what you deserve to get back. Now, if you raise money, let's say you negotiate a $900,000 pre-money valuation, and you raise $1 million to meet your cash expenses, you have now sold 53% of your company, because your post-money valuation is 1.9. That's what the pie looks like. All the founders are getting diluted appropriately based on that negotiation of fundraising, Series A money. The pie is now frozen. You use that money to market stuff, to accelerate your testing, to do all the great things, to make more money. Now you got to share your money with this guy when it comes in. Profits or proceeds of sale go that way. So using the slicing pie, the dynamic model, what you got is a perfectly fair system. It's an absolutely perfectly fair way to divide relative risk. It takes into account the actual contributions that people actually made, not what they said they were going to make, what they actually made. It's providing ongoing motivation to continue contributing. I showed you how to add and subtract people. So using this model, I can go into business with you guys today. We could all be in the same pie this afternoon if you wanted to, because it's that flexible. It's flexible in the face of rapid change, and there's no alligator pit negotiations. My goal in life is to make sure you all have exactly what you deserve in your company, no more and no less. So I've created a plethora of materials to help support this, including cheat sheets. I've written 3 books on this topic. Get Them Gators is what you give to your potential partners to convince them this is the right thing to do. It's a 12-page book. If they don't want to read a 12-page book, they can skip to the last page. It's a 1-page summary. If they don't want to do that, what do you say to them? You say what I say, which is bye-bye. I don't want to work with you. Slicing Pie is the original book I'm selling, and then Fair and Square is a rewritten version of Slicing Pie. I got so excited, I wrote a whole new book on the exact same model. There's a spreadsheet you can track online. As people contribute, you can track. There's software on my website, slicingpie.com. All your people can contribute. It'll calculate the pie in real time. And there's lawyers agreement. I'm always looking for local lawyers who can write local tax law. I travel all over the world to do this. It's my first trip to Canada. We're always looking for lawyers who know how to implement. That's my story. Thank you.